can already tell this is going to be a rambly one. Greetings, adventurers. This is the Grassy Gnoll. I am your dungeon master, the most tiredest boy. And today I'm going to talk to you about Dungeons and Dragons because that's what we do on this channel. This has been long. This is maybe the 4th or 5th time I've recorded this video in 2 weeks. Partly because of noise reasons, partly because of lighting reasons. The noise reason meant that I now shoot at night, which has prompted lighting. And then there's just me not really knowing what I have to say. There's probably going to be a point where my energy levels raise, and it's going to be the point where I get to stuff that I haven't said 5 times already. If I'm getting jazzed, it's because I'm saying something I haven't said a load before. You got moist mustache sound. Okay, I have a homebrew. I have a homebrew to talk to you about today for everyone's favorite thing to bicker about in Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I have made an alignment homebrew. I put it out not too long ago, and I just wanted to talk about it. Alignment's one of those things. It's been in D&D since D&D. As long as D&D's been there, alignment's been there.
This made a lot of people very angry and has been widely regarded as a bad move.
Since D&D happened, alignment has been argued about. I think it's worth talking about, and I think it's worth me throwing my hat into the ring and talking about what I think about alignment. My 1-page homebrew that has solved alignment in D&D forever, for the benefit of people who haven't been playing D&D for very long, for the benefit of people who have just stumbled across this and for some reason are still watching, or for the benefit of my mother, who I'm pretty sure is the only person who does watch these videos. I'm gonna describe alignment just very quickly. I'm gonna give you the crash course in D&D alignment. So, alignment in D&D is used to describe things like your character's worldview and their personal politics. In the first iteration of D&D, it was 3 points on a single axis. You had lawful, which was the side of order. You had chaos, which was the side of chaos. And you had neutral, the midpoint, representing, I would argue, they represent a detachment from the concepts of order and chaos, or an inability to understand them. Usually occupied, the way I see it, by non-sentient life and then players with commitment issues. Over time, alignment incorporated a second axis, also with 3 points labeled good, neutral, evil, which gave us 9 alignments to choose from, like combining those things in the various ways that you could. And like I say, since alignment happened, people have been arguing about it. I have some thoughts on alignment. I have some stuff I don't like about alignment, as everyone does. I'm going to just keep hammering it home. This exists to argue about and for very little else. My first issue with alignment is just, I don't know why it's there. It doesn't do anything. Genuinely, why is it there? I don't. In 5e, besides paladins and maybe I'd argue clerics, there aren't mechanical reasons to care about your character's alignment. There's no stick and or carrot making you do alignment stuff. At this point, even with paladins, you have tenets, right? You have an oath that paladins take. You could scrap alignment entirely and the game would be pretty much the same, almost entirely. I kind of get why. I do see where it's come from and why now, like, alignment in 5th edition is extremely hands-off, like absurdly hands-off, to the point where you might as well not have it. In the days of yore, in Gygaxian D&D, alignment was prescriptive and limited player expression. You had penalties for acting against your character's alignment. There were things like alignment only spells, alignment only items, alignment only, just stuff. If you did anything that wasn't your character's alignment, you suffer penalties for it. Depending on your class, you would be forced to pick certain alignment. So the one that always pops out to me is druids have to be true neutral, like representing that kind of like the balance of nature. and that like good crunchy stuff. Crunchy here meaning hippie, and not the nerd crunchy meaning like number crunching. And I think that's not cool or fun. And I want to make D&D as cool and fun as possible. Alignment hindering what player choices you can make, I don't think is good. But I think now we have alignment in 5th edition, and it's just sort of ephemeral. It's just kind of there, and there's not a great deal of application or consequence for it. And like I say, I get it. I do get it. I get that it can limit player expression, and I get you wanting it not to. But I don't understand why you would have it and have it not mean anything. It's there, and it's not doing anything. I also think alignment is just generally difficult to talk about. It makes certain things, especially if you're new to D&D, you know, if you're in character development sort of stage and you're working on like what your dude is about, it presents a stumbling block. I run games at my favorite bar. Like, it's really open. Like, we get people who play D&D for a while. We get a lot of people who haven't. And they'll turn up and say, there's this alignment thing on my character sheet. What does that mean? And I end up telling them just like, don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. Play your character as you would. So probably like chaotic good or something. Because that's all you really have to do. Like, I think it is a stumbling block. I think it's because it's hard to talk about alignment on its own terms. Usually people will try to like refer to like real world examples. I think it's laughable to just like think even for a second that like you can just carve up all of human action and just designate it to one of 9 spots on a grid, which is why I think that you end up with people trying to recontextualize alignment. I did this as well. Before I settled on the homebrew that I ended up writing, I was working on trying to recontextualize alignment away from the good, evil, lawful chaos paradigm thing. I know Matt Colville, Dale Kingsmill, I'm sure dozens of DMs have done this before. I wanted to do it as well. I wanted to put my spin on it. How I ended up trying to kind of like shift it away from good, evil, law, chaos was to think of it in terms of what could benefit society, what goes against society, and then whether the decision to do that came from an external source like religion, the laws of the land or something like that, or if it was a more internal like moral code that you developed. Neutral, I labeled detached or self-preserving, which is more or less where neutral would be. Your neutral goods, they do good until it gets too difficult. The same with evil. Detached from just like the idea of society or just kind of like acting purely on self-preservation. I think that makes a bit of sense. This is where I was. This is the kind of like, this is how I was coming at it. And I think lots of people do like, how do I make alignment realistic?
The bad news is it doesn't work. Please, stop murmuring.
I ended up with a same but different set of issues to good, evil, law, chaos, which was, like with good and evil, ideas on what's good for society and bad for society differ from society to society and from person to person. So making it apply to reality, I don't think works. People have been trying to work out this good, bad, or good, evil thing since time immemorial. People have been thinking, like, since we've had the ability to like conceptualize just good and bad, we've been talking about what really is good and bad. People with way bigger brains than me have been thinking about good and evil, and in terms of like things that like actually matter, and not the magic dragon game. Like, you know, actual important stuff. People are thinking about it, and you know, they struggle. And this 9-point grid probably ain't it. I think we maybe need to keep trying on kind of like a universal ethical framework than good, evil, law, chaos. Perhaps. So I think what happens usually after that is like the second most common thing, or maybe the most common thing, especially with new players, like if you're trying to explain these alignments, is applying it to characters from pop culture as like a benchmark for what those alignments mean. Here's my favoritist boy, and they're this alignment. And I don't think that's helpful either. The reason I think it's not very helpful is, are you ready? This is a big one. This is kind of a big one. I think it's gonna wrinkle some of your brains. People change. People change. Characters change. Characters in stories change. They end the story more often than not thinking or feeling about things in a different way to how they started the story. Books, movies, comics, episodes of Terrace House, a fifth thing. The people in them change. That's narrative. That's what makes good stories. The people in them change. Batman has not been whatever alignment you think he is, and I'm not going to get into it because I don't care, for the entirety of his publication history. Because if that was the case, Batman would suck. Do you honestly think that The Dark Knight ends with Batman being exactly the same dude as he was at the start? Like, really? Nah. I think this is kind of how it's thought of in D&D. I think this is how alignment seems to make things work. It's static, and it dictates to an extent what choices your player can make. I'm not coming at this from a kind of place of I should be able to do whatever I want. Like, I should be able to play my dude like I would my dude in Skyrim, and just whatever I want goes, and like I should be able to get away with it.
Watch the skies, traveler.
I don't think that at all, but I think it's the static, it's the unchanging nature of it. When you choose an alignment, it's that for as long as your character is breathing, which I think is just anathema to good storytelling and good narrative. With these ideas, all this swimming around in my head, these things that I don't really like about alignment, trying to use my big galaxy brain to make it better and kind of like fully recontextualize it, and then that crashing and burning. Yeah, I guess there are a couple of hot takes. This is the hot take section of this video. This is the first hot take. I don't think it's that hot. I might not call this the hot take bit. This might be like lukewarm takes at best. My lukewarm, mild spice take is you don't have to use alignment in your games, guys. You don't have to. Same thing goes for any mechanic, rule, spell, bit of fluff, anything you want. You don't have to use any of it in your campaign. That's allowed. No one's going to tell you off. If your players tell you off for not using something in your game, they don't have to play in that game. I very often don't use spell preparation in my campaigns because for a lot of my players, it's just a bit fiddly and it slows stuff down. And that's fine. It's okay. Don't use it if you don't want to. Do what you want. No one can stop you. Kill your gods. Burn this motherfucker down.
Come on, Boogie, let's burn this motherfucker down. Let's burn this motherfucker down. Let's burn it.
My second take, or the thing that I've taken away from this, is that if you're gonna have alignment in your campaign should be about those alignments in some kind of tension. It doesn't have to be like a very kind of like classic good and evil high fantasy thing. But whatever your description of good, evil, law, chaos, whatever it is, describe what they are. And then I think your campaign should be about those ideals, those concepts in some kind of tension, in some way. Otherwise, I genuinely don't see why you'd include it in the game. As it is in 5e, it doesn't apply. It doesn't do anything. So I don't know why it's in there. So in game design, right? In video game design, board game design, in the designing of games, video game design especially, because everything takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do, you have to think very hard about what systems and mechanics you want to implement in your game and why. What is my goal in doing it in this specific way? I think in D&D, with a lot of stuff, because you're not building it from scratch, because you have a book, you have several books, at least 3. I think the answer for why are you implementing this in your game is, well, because it's in the book. And because it's in the book, it's assumed that it's there for a reason, and that reason is a good one. Most stuff, the answer to the question, what is the goal in having it be like this? The answer is going to be good. Why do we have fighting in this game? Why do we have ability scores in this game? All of the answers to these questions are pretty good. They're good answers. But for alignment, if I was to ask, why is alignment still in 5e? I think it's got to a point where it's still there because it always has been. And no one knows what to do with it. Which is why I think you have so many arguments about it and why you have so many reframings of it. Because it's there and it should mean something. And at the moment, I don't think it does. What is this actually for? I don't think that question gets asked too much. And I don't know what the answer is. But I know it's not, it's a good way to describe morality. Because it isn't. And I know it's not, it's a good way to describe characters in stories. Because it isn't. Like, if you take away one thing from this as a DM, interrogate or like ask yourself a little bit more why you are making it like this. What is my end game? What are you hoping to achieve by having this thing in your campaign? The answer that I currently have, and the answer that I'm kind of operating under, is that I think alignment can describe a tension between certain values and how those values are viewed by society and described by society. If those values are clearly defined, you need to solve for good, solve for evil. Tradition, innovation, wilderness, civilization, order, chaos. There are plenty of ways you can frame it. But if you have a campaign that isn't about those values, or your character's relation to them, or how the tension plays out in like the game world or in your party or anything, maybe it's not as much of a help as you think. Because otherwise, what's it for? Why do you have it in the game? What I'm aiming to do here is incentivize players just a little bit more to play to their alignment and to codify the tension that I want between those extremes a bit more. The good, the evil, the law, chaos. Like giving mechanical benefits and detriments to taking one side or the other. Like if you come down on good or evil, like I wanted some benefits and I wanted some detriments. So if alignment isn't a big deal to you, or you want to make a campaign about like other stuff, a cool heist, finding treasure, or a magic whistle, or whatever it is, then this might not be the homebrew for you. And like I say, maybe you don't need alignment in that campaign. Also, in making this homebrew, I wanted to use stuff or try and use stuff that was more or less already present. It was already present in the rules, mostly because I'm lazy. But also I wanted something that people who are a touch new to D&D maybe could just like pick up and implement pretty easily without having to rework their game too much. Like I think the stuff that I've got is pretty easily implemented and you don't have to worry about upsetting the balance of your game. I think even if you're a seasoned DM, just having something you can just kind of like pick up, slot into your game with a minimum of fuss can be helpful. Hey, if I'm wrong, leave a comment for the algorithm and I'll maybe answer it. So with all this in mind, we're using vanilla 5e alignment. So we're just using good, evil, lawful, chaos. And then we're going to tweak a couple of bits that are in the player handbook and the DMG, Dungeon Master's Guide. Okay, day two. It's day 2. This has gone so much longer than I thought it would. All I wanted to do was make just a fun little homebrew about alignment and talk about it for a bit, and it's kind of got away from me. It turns out there's a lot of stuff that I think about alignment. There's a lot of stuff that I have to say about alignment. So let's keep going. My first thing that I want to do with alignment, it's like a twofold system, a twofold thing. The first one is probably the easiest, the individual session to session stuff. I think it's something that people are already doing. It's just I wanted it on paper because maybe people haven't thought about it. It's just give inspiration for fulfilling tasks that align with your alignment. This part of the homebrew was inspired by an article that Black Cat Red Visitor wrote about like a critique of like Gygaxian alignment, like kind of your traditional Dungeons and Dragons alignment, and then a sort of like a hack for Dungeon World, the powered by the apocalypse like fantasy setting. Check him out. Check out his Patreon. Giving like a little reward for just kind of doing something that someone with your character's alignment would do. It encourages that kind of play a bit more. I think that can lead to some cool stuff. Like I have a variety of tasks that are pretty broad, but definitely fall into the camp of law, chaos, evil, good, blah, blah. This isn't an exhaustive list. I will always recommend people to use their imagination, get creative with it. If you think it's a good idea, kind of like broaden the scope of it. You can make it more kind of specific to your campaign, things like that. Some of the examples I have. Good. Defend those weaker than yourself. Evil. Kill a defenseless person. Chaos. Break the law in pursuit of your goals. Law. Turn someone in to the appropriate authorities. Instead of killing someone, you hand them into the law, which I think is awesome. I think there are so many cool kind of story things that you can do. I've been like chain watching a lot of westerns recently, and it just like I love that kind of idea that you're just like escorting this surly criminal to the authorities because like you believe in the law.
Let's just say I don't like cheating the hangman. He got to make a living too.
I just think it's pretty rad. I think that's a cool idea. I can't wait to try it in one of my games. You have this bandit leader clapped in irons. They're your prisoner. But at the first sign of trouble, like at the first random encounter, you have all this stuff that you can play with. Are you going to try and protect them so that you can like get your bounty or whatever it is, so that you can fulfill this lawful thing? Are you going to free them so that they can help you fight? Like there's loads of cool stuff that I think you can do. I didn't put anything in for neutral, and I caught some flack for this on Reddit for not giving like neutral, like players of a neutral alignment, kind of like as much stuff that they can do. This is maybe like a third like mildly spicy take. Pretty much all the neutral alignments, bar maybe neutral evil, they just strike me as NPC alignments. The vibe they give off, like, or I think what they bring to a character is just kind of like being someone who's like along for the ride.
What are you guys doing tonight? I'm up for whatever.
And I know people have kind of like ways that like, you know, interesting ways to play characters of kind of like these more kind of blur alignments, and like that's cool. I respect that. If you wanna bring something to like this kind of just this sort of like moderate, like cool, that's fine. But I think in what I'm trying to do, like I say, I want alignment. If it's being used in the campaign, I want it to be kind of meaningful, and I want a lot of the campaign to be about that conflict between these two values, or these however many values. And I think if you're just gonna stay neutral in that, then yeah, like I think it makes sense in the context of that campaign. You wouldn't get as much cool stuff because you haven't picked a side. Like I think at least in this, like picking a lane is a good idea. There's still stuff like if you're lawful neutral, do your lawful thing and you'll get the points. If you're like if you're neutral good, then do the good stuff. But like okay, so this is another thing about kind of like the actions. What's a neutral deed? How do you act neutrally? Do I give inspiration for kind of like I do nothing? I stand by and just like remain neutral. Oh yeah, cool. You get inspiration point because you stayed out of the fight. Like it just I can't get on board with it really. I think at least in the kind of campaign that I would use alignment in, if you're neutral, you would not get as much reward. You would not get as much cool stuff because you haven't picked a side. You are choosing to remain outside of it, and the campaign is about the fight between those two sides. Yeah, so I think this is cool. Like just giving someone just a little piece of candy for doing something that like makes sense for their character's alignment. Keep it broad, make your own examples for them, and like I say, I think that this is something that a lot of people are already kind of doing. I just wanted to make it a bit more formal, put it out into the consciousness, to just kind of like maybe get some people who hadn't thought about it that way thinking about it that way. Then we have the macro. This is one for the whole party, like it applies to everyone kind of equally because they're all affiliated with each other, right? It is to do less with your actions and more how they are perceived by the people who inhabit the world that your campaign is in, otherwise known as the game world. For this, I actually think the original, like the 3 points on a single axis system from like back in the day, I think for my purposes, it's a touch more useful because it's dealing with perception rather than kind of like the true nuances of like what you're doing. I think just a good bad swingometer kind of does the trick. And what I have for that is kind of like rejigging the honor system from the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't know really anyone who uses the honor system, like the kind of the honor ability score in their games. You know, you can blow the cobwebs off that. The party has an honor score. They have a score of 10 and it's an ability score, and it's a score that the whole party share. It can be used instead of your charisma modifier when you're making persuasion checks to interact with good or evil NPCs. What I like about it is it's kind of a push-pull. If you're doing good deeds, then you get benefits to your dealings with like good aligned NPCs, but you have detriments to your evil aligned NPCs. Like I say, use it at the end of each quest or each kind of arc. Whatever your characters have done for the quest, establish how that's likely to have been viewed, and then ascribe an alignment to it. So ascribe like a lawful good or a chaotic evil or a what have you to kind of like the general perception of the party by the, you know, the world at large. Let's say there's a vampire, a vampire, in the town that your party is staying at. Let's say there's a vampire loose. The party defeat the vampire. They bring them to account in the town square, but they have a wizard who's a bit trigger happy. They send a fireball down, and yeah, it kills the vampire, but it sets a building on fire. You have a good kind of outcome because the town is safe from the vampire, but there's a little bit of chaos. These guys are loose cannons. These guys play by their own rules. Better watch out for them. So yeah, like depending on how the party's acted, at the end of each quest, each arc, they have a number of points that they can put into that honor score. The higher up it goes, the higher their score for interacting with good NPCs. And if it goes lower, if they're acting chaotically or evilly, they won't be able to interact with good NPCs as well, but they'll have bonuses to interacting with evil NPCs. So like I say, it's a push and pull. Look at the homebrew. The link to the homebrew is in the description. I've scored the different things in this way. I'm not going to go through it because this video is long enough. Check it out, or I might put a thing here. We'll see. When you start like maxing the score out one way or the other, you get these kind of cool bonuses, which I think are cool. You get these fun, cool bonuses, which are fun and cool. If you max it out in good, the leader of the kingdom, the king, the vizier, the emperor, they gift you a mark of prestige, like a parcel of land, a letter of recommendation, a shiny medal to pin on your lapel. Giving parcels of land, strongholds, things like that, they're always good. They always encourage this kind of like different kind of play to the sort of like just tramp through the wilderness and kill everything you see, steal their stuff. You know, the murder hobo play style. It's nice to switch that up, but it's not all that simple. You are also despised by the criminals, the criminal entities that you fight against. So you have evildoers pursuing you because they realize that you are a threat to all of their ways of life. You know, they put out feelers trying to get you, and they've been doing research. They know your weaknesses. They know what you're likely to do. If you got the trigger happy fireball wizard, they come prepared for fireballs. They're going to turn up loaded for bear to take you down. It was kind of inspired by the way that sort of like Sleeping Dogs and wow, this is a pull, and Splinter Cell Double Agent, how their kind of like loyalty systems work. Because you're an undercover cop, the more shady stuff you did, it would get you closer to the crims that you were trying to buddy up with. But it meant that the bosses, the people who you were working for, they started to trust you less and less. I do like that. I just think it's sick. I think it's really fun. I like that by opening certain doors, you're closing others. And it sets up some cool story stuff. Again, let's say you need to, the party needs to infiltrate a group of assassins, or kind of like try and take them down from the inside. But they've been doing too much good. They're known faces. Just walking up to like the boss of the Assassin's Guild or whatever, this isn't going to cut it. Because you spent the last 4 quests being, the bestest, most honorable boys in the land. Maybe you need to go deep cover. Maybe you're Leonardo DiCaprio in The Departed. You need to go on like this high profile crime spree, this kind of sort of like downward spiral to convince the bad guys that you've gone rogue and make them like more likely to sort of like let you in to the organization.
Are you still a cop? No! Swear on your mother's grave, you're still not a cop! I'm not a fucking cop!
Come on, like how can you not like that? I just think keeping it fluid, keeping it based on perception, the perception of you by like the townsfolk, it means that it is subject to change. Kind of, you are free to act as a character in a story and not a character who just has like a very narrow sort of set of behaviors as defined by their alignment. I think I'm good. I think I'm done. Thank you very much for joining me once again on the Grassy Gnoll. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think of alignment in D&D 5e? Do you think that these tweaks help with alignment in D&D? Do you think there's nothing wrong with alignment in D&D? Do you think I look like a crustier version of Matt Mercer? Please let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, because it's genuinely sad the number of Twitter followers I have at the moment. Donate to my Coffee page. It will enable me to do more fun stuff like this. And check out Black Cat Red Visitor. Their article and Patreon is linked in the thing. That's going to do it. I will see you another time to talk about another Dungeons and Dragons thing that I have not thought of yet, because I don't really know what I'm doing here. Goodbye.